Alright, so here's the deal. After you watch this video here today and are able to grasp the general idea of what I'm basically showing you, if you choose to go forward and actually try what I'm suggesting you do, then in my opinion, you should no longer have any valid excuse for ever feeling like your hands aren't feeling limber enough or loosened up when you're playing. So long as you actually took some time to do this kind of work beforehand at some point during any given day of playing or practicing the guitar. These days, for me, it's only very rarely that I may feel, stiff and not warmed up, and that's because there's hardly ever a day that I actually play the guitar where I'm not doing this sort of stuff. So hopefully that should sound inspiring. The only other kind of work I can think of that I may regularly do that can even rival this kind of work's ability to even loosen me up might be the drum kind of practice that I do, which I've already made some videos on, and you should totally check out if you haven't seen them already, because that stuff works incredibly as well. Anyway, before I go any further, my name is Derek Clavin, and welcome to episode 56. If this is the first video you've ever seen on this channel, this is basically a free online jazz guitar course that unfolds in a logical manner and keeps building upon itself. So if you really want to benefit, I would go back to the beginning and try as best as you can to go in order. I know that a lot of the videos are long, but what I always say is you could watch this video here first since you clicked on it, and if you like it, then you can go back to the beginning and watch maybe the first 3 or 4 episodes, and then you could take it from there. And I'm also available for private lessons and have a lot of accompanying PDFs to go along with a lot of the videos on this channel, and all that stuff can be found on my website and Patreon. Okay, so in today's video, I'm basically going to show you how exactly I take all the exercises from the last 3 videos and put them into practice so that I have something like a routine that is very clear and deliberate, which makes it very easy to follow through with on a consistent basis. All I need to do is walk through the hoops over and over again. I want to remind you that because this kind of work is part of the work that I do for developing the body component, ideally I want this stuff to feel easy and simple and not require any significant amount of mind power or thought, like if I was specifically working on the mind component of the whole mind-body-spirit thing. I've said before that once you do this stuff a few times and it's already enough for you to start memorizing it, it should become essentially a mindless activity that requires very little brain power to actually get through it, which in my opinion makes it a lot easier to be able to consistently do without feeling like you may need a lot of motivation to even want to do it. This is why when it comes to stuff like working on technique, I personally like to approach a lot of it in a way where I'm trying to keep what I'm actually playing as mindless of an activity as possible so that I don't have anything extra to focus on and can fully concentrate on things like execution, feel, technique, etc. So I'm talking about stuff like how a lot of musicians will practice certain fundamental things like scales and arpeggios, for example, when they're deliberately trying to work on technique. And while I wouldn't say there's anything fundamentally wrong with doing that, or that it would never be a good idea to do that kind of work at any point in your musical development, if you're talking about specifically working on technique and really trying to be efficient, I personally believe that it can be more practical and efficient to practice stuff that more specifically isolates this technical component without having to worry about anything else. So I know that I'm rambling on about this point, but try to grasp what I'm saying, because if you really do want to make some efficient progress, consistent technical work is pretty much a must. And the easier it is to shut off your brain, so to speak, and basically go on autopilot when you do this kind of work, albeit that you're still concentrating and striving for perfection, the easier it should be to actually consistently even want to do this kind of stuff, which obviously increases your rate of progress. Alright, so I already recorded a whole session of what I basically do that I'm now going to go through, and I ended up recording the guitar unplugged, which I'm honestly not really sure how I feel about, and recorded it with a SM57 mic no less, which is probably silly, but whatever. I suppose you can consider this a really crappy demo of just the acoustic unplugged sound of the amazing Collings i30 guitar that I just love so much. Anyway, like I said, all of these exercises I'm going to get into were already discussed in the last 3 videos. So, as far as the specifics go for things like what I'm actually playing, the picking patterns, how I'm playing these in time, and whatever else, you can check out those videos if you need to. Now, I mentioned in those videos the importance of being able to figure out what your own personal comfort zone may be when you're starting out with any of this stuff. Meaning, what's a good subdivision for you to start with, what's a good starting tempo for you that really feels doable and easy, and about where you might be tapping out right now as far as a maximum tempo or plateau goes. And again, detailed info on all of that can be found in those videos. So obviously everyone's different, and the unique parameters for how anyone may inevitably practice this sort of stuff really shouldn't be exactly what you're going to see me do here. But regardless of that, this should still give you a really clear idea of, what to basically do or how to do it. Keep in mind that even for me personally, I obviously didn't start out practicing this stuff being able to do it as good as I could generally do it now. I still have my good days and my bad days, and even just good individual reps and bad individual reps. But with consistent practice, the general trend of my skill level should be progressing upward. Alright, I'm gonna start now. So, the very first thing that I do is the little exercise that I demonstrated at the end of episode 53 with the George Benson picking style. And I mentioned in that video how I felt that this simple little exercise really lends itself well to that particular style of picking, since the specific combination of playing 3 notes on the first string of the pattern and then 4 notes on the second string works out to fall perfectly in line with the whole economy picking down and alternate picking up thing that is part of the George Benson picking style, and it works out in a way where it will consistently begin with a downstroke on the first note every time. So I'm really only doing this exercise just to begin by reacquainting myself to feeling comfortable with that whole thing every day that I may play or practice the guitar. And I'm not really using it to increase my technical skill level so much, and that will come right after anyway. Because of this, I don't feel I really need to do this with a ton of reps, and I do it at the same slow tempo and subdivision for the whole entire time. So I do this as eighth notes at 30 beats per minute the quarter note, which you'll hear now is pretty slow, and like I said, not a lot of reps. I'll usually just do 4 times through the pattern so that it turns around and starts on the downbeat, basically twice, alright? So 30 beats per minute, it's basically like this. And even though I'm playing the eighth note subdivision, even if you were doing something like quarter notes at this tempo, because it's such a slow tempo and there's a lot of space between the beats, it can help to subdivide when you count. So basically in your head, you're thinking 1 and 2 and 3. Help you lock into the beat. So I just do it 4 times, and that's basically it. And then I'm gonna stop because I go immediately into the next thing straight from there. right? So that's basically the first thing that I do. And like I always say, I want to start with something that is very clear and simple and easy, just so that I know I'm doing something accurate, and then I could build it from there. So after this, the next thing that I'll immediately go into, and I do with a lot of reps actually, is practice the chromatic scales, just like how I showed you guys in episode 54. Now, I showed you guys in that video that there's two main ways that I practice the chromatic scale on the guitar, and I said that the first way that I showed you was definitely more of the main way that I practice it, and the way that I've been practicing the chromatic scale for a lot longer than the second way. And I'm bringing this up because what you're going to see me go into right here is the second way, but I added that a lot later. So for a while, I would just practice the chromatic scale the first way, which you're going to see afterwards today, and start at like the same tempo that you're going to see me doing with the second way now, basically. And the only reason why I do the second way first is because, you know, since I introduced it later, I find the second way of playing this scale a little bit more technically demanding and challenging, so I'd rather cover the slower tempos with the harder way, and then once I get to a certain tempo, I switch to practicing it with the main way that I do the chromatic scale. So like I said, all the info for how I play these is in episode 54, and I practice my chromatic scales mainly at all the tempos at 30-second notes, like I also explained in that video, but I was playing eighth notes right before this, and I don't want to jump from eighth notes to 30-second, so before I play 30-second notes, I'm going to play this one time just as 16th notes, as like an intermediate sort of tempo or subdivision, okay? So this is the second way, where I basically stay in position and go from B to B, you know, 2 octaves, and then I come down, alright? And I just do this once as 16th notes, and then immediately you'll see, well, you know, stop, but immediately I go into 30-second notes, same thing, and this is where I'm going to really start to do a lot of reps, okay? So this is still at 30 beats per minute, and when I do this exercise, I like to practice this in a way where I do 2 reps at each tempo, but I do them without stopping, because, like I said, the nature of how this sort of position of this scale falls, it's tricky to kind of keep it going, especially at the top end and in the bottom end. So I just increased the tempo by 3 beats per minute. So now I'm doing 33 beats per minute, same thing. I'll let you listen without me talking. So you immediately go into the second rep. Right? And then this is at 33. So my interval of tempo is 33. That may sound excessive, but wait till you see what I do next. But right? And the whole idea, you know, by having these small intervals is for it to not feel that much harder, you know, for a little while as you're increasing the tempo little by little. Of course, you're going to reach a plateau where you start to notice, you know, the faster tempo and it gets harder. But, you know, I think it's a lot easier to practice efficiently if you're kind of small chunking it up in these little steps, right? And because I have like a set number of quick reps and I know that I'm building the tempo up little by little, it's, you know, I don't have to think about, well, how many reps do I have to do this? Because I know I'm going from this tempo to this tempo, and the reps will be more than enough covered, okay? So, I don't know what we're at right now, but I basically continue this, and, you know, I'll speed up the tempo here. So, I don't know where I'm at now, but I like to do this at 72 beats per minute, the quarter note, for the last one, alright? And, you know, it was a little sloppy today, you know, I didn't like how all these things were sounding, but, you know, let's see how this kind of ends right here. Okay. Yes, a little sloppy, but, you know. So, now, because I kept going up 3 beats per minute, So after 72, I get to 75 beats per minute, and now I practice the main way of the chromatic scale. And I also do 2 reps, but I don't do it continuously. I stop between them, as you're about to see, and instead of going up 3 beats per minute, I go up 1 beat per minute, which you may think is crazy, but this is how champions are built, okay? And I do this from 75 BPM, 2 reps each, all the way up to 85 BPM, right? So, I'll let you listen to it a little bit. And like I always say, you know, I've done this so much, it's like, you know, I could hate on myself for it sounding sloppy or whatever, but it's really like a rep-to-rep thing, you know? And when you've done a ton of reps of stuff, you start to really know, like, when does it sound good and what you're shooting for and when it doesn't. Right? So, I'll just speed this up more to the end. Like I said, I stopped this at 85 BPM. That might be it right here. I don't know. Right? So, after this, we're at 85 BPM, okay? Now, as you may imagine, if you've seen the last couple videos, the next thing that I do, and I'm going to come back to that later, by the way, but I do the 4 exercises that I got from Rodney Jones, and I showed you guys in episode 55. So, basically, with these exercises, and I'm starting the first one at 85 BPM, okay? And if you remember from that video, this is done in quintuplets, or 5 notes per click, okay? Because this is just a 5-note pattern, the first Rodney exercise, right? And I'm increasing this one 5 BPM at a time, and I'm doing like, you know, 6 reps of each, you know, and like I said, just by covering that whole tempo range and doing it little by little, you're getting in a ton of reps, and you're always starting from a place of comfort. I know I'm redundant, I sound like a trainer, but that's how I really think you kind of develop this skill level, and you're always kind of doing it properly and building upon it, and you're not just jumping into difficult stuff and doing it sloppy. So by the time, you know, you reach the harder tempos, even if you start messing up, at least you're coming from a place of comfort, right? So this one I do from like 85 BPM up to like 160 BPM. So if I speed it up, you know. Right, so it's whatever. Alright, now, the next 2 exercises, which is what I go into next, these are more in the triplet sort of feel, alright? So, my tempo range is the same for both of these then, because of that, because it's the same subdivision, and I start at 60 BPM, the quarter note, and I do these personally as 16th note triplets, but when you're first starting out, you can do them as 8th note triplets if you want. Alright, and again, with these, I'm going up 5 BPM at a time, is my sort of interval of tempo. Alright, so I can speed it up a little bit. Yeah, not the greatest today. But that's okay, you know? That's like where you're tapping out, basically. And my maximum tempos, obviously, were not like that when I started. Alright, so this is the 3rd exercise. Same idea, you know. And this one, I do 2 variations of, like I explained in that video, starting on the downbeat and then starting on the upbeat. So I do 4 of each. Maybe, yeah, is it 4? Yeah, 4 each. Right, so this one, again, goes up to like from 60 to 120 BPM. Do it again. right? And then the last one I do is the fourth exercise, and I do this as 16th notes, but you can do them as 8th notes, and I start at 100 BPM, again 16th notes, and I go all the way up to 160 BPM. Okay. Again, trying to concentrate on the feel, the picking technique, you know, trying to stay consistent with all of that, you know, time. Alright, so I can speed this up to the end. Do it again. 160. Right. So after this, like I said before, I like to go back to the chromatic scale the main way, and I just like to practice it a little bit more from 75 BPM right there all the way up to 105, and I just bump it up 5 BPM at a time. And I just like to do this again at the end because now I just did all of those other little mechanical exercises that I got from Rodney, so obviously I'm probably feeling even more warmed up than I felt before I started those, so I want to see how these sound, and this is really where I'm doing like my max tempos with this that you'll probably never have to play this fast, but whatever. But you know, it's like by being able to do this, it'll make your technique and your rhythm and time feel more comfortable and smooth even at slower tempos, because you've, you know, developed the ability to even do something like this, okay? So you really got to treat this stuff almost like a gym routine more than anything else you do on the guitar, right? So after this, you know, we're just going to end this today, and that will be it. So I hope that, you know, this was helpful for a lot of you guys, and by seeing what I'm literally doing, it makes it a lot more clear and easier for you guys to understand what you guys should be doing yourself, right? But obviously, if anyone has any questions or anything they want to say, please put it in the comments. I'm here to help. And that's it for now for like the purely technical and mechanical side of like working on the body component, but there's still more to say. So in the next episode,
hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey,
I'm still going to continue talking about working on the body component, but we're going to talk about some different kinds of things and stuff that is really interesting to me. I think you'll, you know, be interested in as well. All right, so I hope you're excited. So anyway, that's it. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a like and consider becoming a subscriber as well as a contributor to Patreon, where for $5 a month, you'll get all the PDFs that are always coming out on this channel. And if you think anyone else would enjoy this content, please share it with them as well. And I will see you guys in episode 57.
Swinging and playing the blues. That's what we about.
I'm trying to help you.